Well, this one's pretty dear to my heart, guys. We're heading out to Colorado mule deer, and what's exciting about it is they've got the Midwest habitat style of how we handle our whitetail farms, but we're going west, and it's on a scale that's obviously 10 times larger. And that's the part that impresses me, because of the dedication and the amount of work ethic it takes to do this at this scale. It just blows you away.
Yeah, I think there's so many different aspects that I think a lot of people would say, wow, that doesn't ever correlate to the west or the mountains or that type of elevation or that type of rainfall. But when you look at what Freddy's done on this place, you see screening, you see timber operations, you see all these aspects. You're like, well, it really isn't all that different now, is it?
Yeah, when you look at how he breaks it down, and he takes his ranch and he puts it in sections, and water is obviously a huge factor. He's had wildfires go through, planting trees, and he makes sure that every part of his ranch has something that retains elk and mule deer there, which, as we talked earlier, Adam, about, if we can retain them home, then the movement's going to be during daylight, and it's going to be local instead of coming off property lines and dictating movement in daylight hours.
If you just had the food, they could still be over on the neighbor property coming over. So.
He's got it all. Just no different than how we set up our farms here in the Midwest.
I think you think of core area as pertains to mature bucks, right? That's what the big topic is. But essentially that's kind of what he's trying to create in those small units for elk, and applying that same mentality of let's have all the resources spatially laid out to where you can navigate, you can hunt, there's roads, you can make stalks with that type of elevation, but you know that game's going to be consistently there because they don't have to travel far between these high-value resources. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and then he adds these 2 tracks that he's got trails, throughout the entire property in the right locations so that you can get in and get out without minimizing your exposure. And he's even got some cabins placed really deep within the ranch, and when you go deep, you spend the night and you come back out. So you may spend the night 2 or 3 nights in a row, maybe one night. It all depends on what's going on. But between cameras, the trail system, and the cabins, he is really concerned and focused about minimizing exposure and maximizing the whole exit and entry. And he defines it perfectly.
That's
out
crucial
west.
For success, because if you have the best habitat in the world, if you're not hunting it correctly, it doesn't matter. And if you have the best approach in the world, you can still be successful, but it's not going to be as successful as if you have great habitat. So you have to work those two together.
I think what's crazy there is something we take for granted here, is Greg touched on the road system. He had to build this road system on a mountain in order to get any of this work done. It was impassable. You can't get equipment up a mountain, and so the time it took him to establish that system really allowed him to then get in and make the habitat improvements that he had. And once he had that established, if the sky was the limit, he was able to get back there, do the timber stand improvement, manage the fire breaks for wildfire,
fuel
which
reduction
is different.
Cuts.
Exactly.
And I think that's the part that we all realize is this takes time.
Yeah.
And if you think you're going to go out there, whether it's a whitetail farm or a western ranch, you've got to have a strategy, right? We talk about P3 all the time, which is plan, prep, pursue. And he has a strategy that's out 5 to 7 years of what he's trying to accomplish every single year. And the farther he gets into this plan, you can see the rewards happening. But it's taken him many years to get to where we are. We're just now seeing it and benefiting from. But he's been at this well over a couple decades.
Well, that makes me ask a question, because when we're looking at this, this is a lot of what we recommend when you're looking at trying to, let's just take his timber, for example. Him doing it himself, running a chainsaw and saying, let's do it. You gotta figure out a way to bring in the big guns, bring in the big equipment, and do the fuel reduction with the logging operation. Who's got that equipment? He can make money off of that while also improving the habitat. Same thing could probably true. You're talking about some of these meadows having alfalfa. I'm sure they're getting cut and sold for hay, or he's using them for other operations. So somebody else has that equipment. He's not down there going, well, I need the alfalfa for the wildlife, so I'm going to buy the hay equipment. He's going, no, I know Tom who's got the equipment. He's going to pay me for it.
It's no different from leaving standing grain, right, in the Midwest with a farmer. You're not a farmer, but you can pay for those acres to have back, right? just working within the system. I think he's done a great job, and what we try and do, whether it's prescribing to landowners or what you guys do, is just find the strengths that you have or that you can manipulate within your own control, and then get the people to work with you and have those wins along the way where you can then address a scale like that. And then it all comes together relatively seamlessly. You've got a great plan. And gosh, we can't talk about it too much, but that road system on a mountainside, I'm sure there was a lot of planning from a logging operation of where those roads needed to go, and maybe he built additional ones after a logging operation. But you're gonna be thinking about that when you're manipulating on that type of scale. How can I work this to the advantage of hunting at the same time of putting in massive road systems and logging operations? So
yeah, his plan is multifaceted. I mean, he's got everything from habitat to building, keeping, holding game, but he also has specific locations set up with water and food plots and blind locations, and then the juniper tree planting along the road, which keeps things secure for screening. Yep. He really has some big picture stuff where he's improving the health of the game on his property, along with ways to harvest the game, which it's very cool to see.
Which blew me away of the scale of this size. I had a wonderful conversation with Freddy, and you guys can dive into this way better than Casey than I, but it's the funding behind it, right? So I'm like, how does a guy attack this project, because it's so large? It's several thousand acres. Well, Freddy's smart enough that he works through the state of Colorado, and there's funding there. No different than here in the Midwest through the government agencies that you guys have helped us get different fundings for different projects. So they're out there. You just got to seek them, find the expertise, and apply for them, which, yes, it's tedious and a lot of paperwork. But at the end of the day, there are dollars out there to do these type of things.
Yeah. There's a will and there's a way to be able to do it and address that.
Yeah. Not only do you have NRCS type cost share contracts, but you can also, I'm sure, if there's timber value for Freddy, is like, how do we fund this? Is going, well, ultimately, if we were managing this and we said, how can we make this better for wildlife? We're going, how do we get more sunlight to the forest floor? Because we get more sunlight to the forest floor, we're going to have more plants grow up that are food or cover. Yes. If it's closed canopy, dark timber, evergreens, there's no sunlight coming down. So if we can get paid to cut that, whether it be through the value of the logs that are getting hauled off or the government cost share for fuel reduction to stop wildfires, either way, that's going to help fund taking the canopy down and get the sunlight. So check that off. It's either neutral or positive. We're not losing money on that. And then you supplement it with any alfalfa hay sales, and you're going, man, we're positive, we're making money, and we're making habitat at the same time.
I've always looked at, if you can increase the habitat and come out net neutral as far as dollars, you've won.
Yeah.
Because the value of the property is going to go up because of the work that you did.
1,000%. And then the value of the recreational opportunities, which you can't hardly put a value on, right? You're going to enjoy it so much more. And I think that you guys had, as you watched through the episode, I just was amazed at how relaxed those deer are, right? I think that comes from the value of the cover, comes from the value of, you guys are like electric vehicle all the time. You guys weren't just out you were glassing from known exact locations where the vantage point was perfect for you guys, probably wind as well. And you weren't just trompsing through everything. So the game, it's broad daylight, and they're out there feeding. Even on your stalk, deer's just very relaxed. He's unsure, but just all those elements combined. Yes, there's habitat related, but then there's discipline of how you hunt that farm. That is the result of, just unpressured deer.
Yeah, the way he laid it out with the juniper trees down below to where you can cruise, then the food out in front of that, then the cover behind that, so that as you're hunting the mule deer, you are away from them. You're not in between bed to feed, trying to you're mixing it up with them to the point where you're bumping deer. All of that and his mindset behind, we want to grow and hold mature deer, but we also want to have a quality plan to harvest these deer. Yeah. And the way he's got it organized it's it's pretty perfect. I don't know that I'd change a whole lot.
It's the same philosophy we have here, which is feed him forward,
Absolutely.
right? So you go just inside the ranch, and everything that he sets up based on his zones, you're here, and then he's got water, cover, food, whatever, and it's all out there, but they're all coming towards you on every single setup. And so when you really break it down the way Freddy's done it, it's a twin of our farms.
Yeah.
Exit, entry, feed them forward, the cover, the screening, the pressure.
And knowing where they are bedding, I think that's such a missed element when it comes to recreational properties. Everyone focuses food, but keeping areas secure, manipulating the cover, the overstory through logging. If you know where they're bedding, you know where they're headed when they do leave the food and thermals are rising. You just loop around on those roads and you backdoor them.
Yep.
But he's got it figured out, and he's doing the same stuff. And I think it's fascinating because I haven't seen a Western ranch operate like that.
But I will say this: Freddy is extremely disciplined on pressure, and you can do all this work that we've just talked about for the last 8 to 10 minutes. But if you don't treat it with delicate gloves, and there is one part where we actually backed off of Wild Thing because it was getting close to dark, and we're like, you know what, there's no way that we're gonna cut the distance around daylight. So he looked at me and said, hey, let's pull out now, because he's far enough away that he won't know that we're here waiting until dark or right at dark, then make the move.
Yep.
He's very, very conservative. It's patience, patience, and when the time is right, then you get super aggressive. And you'll see that towards the end. There's a time to be passive and there's time to be aggressive. And at the end of the day, you're going to change that deer herd if you're constantly aggressive all the time. And then it's going to diminish all the work that you did with the habitat and so forth.
No doubt. Yeah. To me, it's a classic case of if you take a 2-column spreadsheet and you say, look at everything that is going on in the neighborhood and make sure we check those boxes, and then we're going to add 20 more items on our property to make it so much better than the neighborhood. So you have success that the neighborhood's not having.
It's a rose between two thorns, or it's a diamond in the rough. Like, you can isolate yourself by packing it with a lot of great resources: the food, the cover, the water, laid out spatially, hunted well, hunted smart, so it's secure, and you don't have to own the whole neighborhood to do that and to have influence. I mean, elk and mule deer are on a big scale, right? But here's a prime example that, like, it's just do it right, treat it well, and it's going to produce.
Well, his ranch is one of the smaller ranches of the bordering ranches, and he is the only one that I'm aware of, Casey, you can jump in, that did any screening along the roads. And it's because a lot of the traffic was going through there, and they're stopping and they're glassing the animals. And that creates pressure. And so he's like, the only way to fix this is let's put a wall up to minimize that pressure. And so now they're at the point now that people can't stop and look. So now they're actually coming farther down the ridge line than what they used to because of this screening. So Mother Nature is tough to keep up with. We all know that because she's constantly evolving and constantly changing. And that's one thing that he does extremely well in the West is he's always reassessing at the end of the year, going, we need to do this or that, or more water, or more trees. And he actually takes action. It's one thing to talk about, it's one thing to go action. And Freddy does it extremely well.
Definitely. And he's bow only. And one thing we've experienced throughout the years of being out there is that everybody around him is not archery only. And part of what you see in the episode with the animals not totally tweaking when we get to within a certain, they're not afraid within that distance. Nothing bad has ever happened to these deer outside of 50, 60 yards.
Very relaxed posture.
Yeah.
Those animals.
But
relaxed.
Once you break that 50, 55, they get a little bit uncomfortable. So you got to be ready to shoot plus or minus 50 yards. That 50 to 60 is about where they get to be. They're fine. But you start breaking 40, they don't really put up with it.
Agree.
I think it's just a great culmination of all those elements, understanding the neighborhood, and then what it lacks, and then taking that and making sure you almost exploit what the neighborhood lacks on your place and just dialing it up to a 10 and hunting it appropriately. The results speak for themselves. Clearly in the video, he's got the game.
Yes, he does. Well, we just finished up the complete breakdown of this entire hunt. Check out the link to see the whole thing go down.